In a small room, a woman lives with her son Jack. Joey has spent many days alone in the room. Days that have gone to the point of insanity with a lot of crying. But one of her days, she feels Jack inside her, and after that she has a beautiful son. Now it's been 5 years since the day Jack made Joey's world colorful with his arrival. Jack wakes up and reminds his mother of his birthday, eager to have a birthday party similar to the ones on TV. Then, with his mother's promise to bake a real birthday cake, he gets up and greets the things in the room like a child. After that, Joey and Jack spend a good time together, and like every day, they do morning exercise, eat breakfast, and even play. They prepare the cake together, and Jack, happy to have a real cake, is saddened by the lack of birthday candles. Then Joey convinces him that this cake without candles is also a birthday cake. At night, she takes Jack into the closet and prepares him for bed. After Jack falls asleep, old Nick arrives and brings Joey jeans. Then on the occasion of Jack's birthday, then he promises a gift. Jack wakes up without a sound and looks out of the closet. During his waking hours in the closet, he immerses himself in his beautiful childish world and assesses whether the objects around him are real or not. He feels that probably Lucky, the dog he drew, is outside the room and will surely come to him one day. The next day comes and Jack notices a mouse in the room. He saw a living creature apart from themselves. He becomes happy and tries to make friends with him by feeding him. But at this moment, Joey throws a slipper and makes the mouse run away. Jack is upset about the mouse's escape and angry with his mother. Then he asks his mother to tell old Nick to ask for Lucky. Joey also explains that Nick isn't their friend and that the birthday present was a joke. In addition, they don't have enough space to keep a dog. He even brings Lucky's fantasy to Jack and hurts Jack's tender and innocent heart. The days are passed and Jack sleeps in the closet every night as normally, and after Nick leaves, then he returns to his mother's bed. After a few days, Nick comes with a toy car. The next day, Jack is very excited about his only toy and plays with it all day. Night comes and Nick comes to the room with food for Jack and Joey, and in explaining the lack of vitamin pills, he brings up his 6 months of unemployment and asks Joey to be grateful. At this moment, he notices Jack's voice and he has never seen the child. Curiously goes to the closet. Joey takes him to the bed to distract him from Jack. After a few hours, when Nick and Joey have fallen asleep, Jack goes to Nick's bed. Nick wakes up and Joey fearfully blocks herself between Jack and Nick so as not to harm her son. Nick gets very angry with Joey's behavior and threatens her with death to repeat this act. Then he leaves the room and Jack cries back to his mother's arms and apologizes for coming out of the closet. The next morning, Jack wakes up to see steam coming from his mouth and imagines himself as a dragon in his mind. Joey wakes up with Jack's voice and to see the steam from Jack's mouth. Then she checks the electricity and finds that old Nick has cut it off. After that, they put on more clothes and Jack starts reading the story of Alice in Wonderland. Joey thinks and feels that she has to confront Jack with the reality of life. She explains to Jack that the mouse that he was interested in, it is outside the room. But Jack doesn't accept this explanation because the existence of another world outside the room doesn't fit in his mind. Jack is faking it and Joey finds out. Joey asks Jack to think about the big world outside, to people, dogs and trees that are real. Then she confronts Jack's resistance to accepting the truth and Jack asks Joey to tell the same old story. But Joey is determined to bring Jack to reality. She tells her own story. The story of when she was only 17 years old and old Nick in the pretext of receiving aid for his dog illness. Then Joey is imprisoned in his yard and now she has been separated from her parents for 7 years. It then draws Jack's attention to the skylight and the real life outside it. Jack resists again and ends the discussion by yelling at his mother. Joey gets sad and goes to bed after a few hours and stays in bed all day. Jack is happy when the power is turned on and starts playing, trying to wake up his mother too. But Joey, with a state similar to depression, she ignores Jack. Jack continues to play, looking at the egg snake, the toilet, and his mother. Then he destroys the toy car and throws it in the trash, and after several hours of solitude, he falls asleep. The next morning, Joey notices the car in the trash, while Jack questions whether the turtle and the alligator are real, as well as the people on TV. Joey rejoices in Jack's drive to learn and the outside world. To go out, Jack suggests that they surprise old Nick, and Joey tells the story of several years ago that he held the toilet lid at him with the intention of escaping, but Nick neutralizes the attack and the Joey is damaged. Jack suggests murdering Nick in his sleep, but Joey doesn't consider this plan practical either, because with the entrance door closed because it's encrypted so it will not be possible to escape. Then Joey has a new thought. She asks Jack to pretend to be sick and weak. Then she slaps a handkerchief dipped in boiling water on his face so that Red has a severe fever. Also, assuming that old Nick will take Jack to the hospital, she asks Jack to ask for help and the police at the hospital and show him the letter he has in his pocket. Then she puts her finger in her mouth and puts it on Jack's clothes to get the sign and smell of the disease. After a few hours, Nick comes to the room and Joey informs him of Jack's high fever. Nick walks over to Jack and notices his high fever, then promises to get him a strong antibiotic tomorrow. And he doesn't pay any attention to Joey's plea for the hospital and leaves the room. Joey is deeply saddened by the failure of her plan and cries alone in the silence of the night. The next day, she draws a new plan. Jack must pretend to die. In fact, in order for old Nick not to realize the truth, Joey wraps Jack in a rug and Jack has to try to get out after leaving the room and then ask for help from the first person. They train together so that Jack can carry out the plan well. But Jack is afraid of this role and asks his mother to make a plan for next year. But he faces the insistence of the Joey. Then he gets angry with his mother and screams in anger. Eventually, Jack goes along with the plan and he promises his mother that he will ask others for help and reveal his mother's name. Then, as a sign of his mother's presence, he puts her fallen tooth in her mouth. Old Nick comes in with antibiotics and is surprised by the rolled-up rug. Tearfully, Joey recalls the story of Jack's high fever and then tells of his death. Nick explains that they need to get Jack out of the room. Joey pretends to be upset. Then she asks Nick to bury Jack in a beautiful place and promise not to cast his dirty eyes on his daughter's body. Nick also transports Jack's body to the van by imagining a girl. After a few moments, Jack follows his mother's instructions and gets off the rug. Then, seeing a stop sign, he tries to jump out when Nick realizes Joey's deception. When the car stops, Jack jumps out of the van and starts running. Then he runs into a man and asks him for help. Afraid of revealing the story, Nick leaves Jack. The passerby also calls the police and describes the incident. Officer Parker arrives at Jack's bedside, who is very anxious and scared, and asks him to show him his house. Jack, in a state of involuntary and stunned fear, is unable to respond to the officer. Then he shows his mother's tooth and walks out of the room. Officer Parker and his colleague Tom roam the streets to find Jack's room. Then, while Tom considers the patrol fruitless and Jack under the influence of drugs, Parker tries his best to find a sign of Jack's whereabouts. He questions Jack and realizes that the room in question is actually a shed with skylights instead of windows. Jack also tells of the execution of the plan that he was supposed to jump when he saw the stop sign, but he succeeded after 3 signs. Upon hearing these statements, Parker is happy and calls the center and requests a patrol to find a shed with a light at a distance of 3 stop signs from Elm Street. According to the statements of the passerby, he also requests to find the red van using satellite images. Finally, the room is found by the efforts of the police. Joey also leaves the room with indescribable happiness and runs to Jack and hugs him. Then they are taken to the hospital. The next morning, Jack wakes up and is surprised and afraid of the hospital environment. Then he wakes up his mother and asks her to go back home and he confesses to wetting his pants. Joey also tells about her mother and father that they will come to see them soon. Then she takes Jack to the bathroom and she says of the many gifts that they will accept them. Jack sees the shower for the first time and is afraid to take a bath with it. After taking a bath, Dr. Middle comes into the room to see Jack. Jack also takes refuge with his mother with anxiety. The doctor asks Jack to eat his breakfast. Then, considering Jack's distance from the outside world, he suggests sunglasses, sunscreen and a mask for Jack. He also gives Joey a painkiller for her back pain until the surgery to control her pain. Dr. Middle also asks Joey to think twice about returning home quickly, because Jack may not be ready to face the hustle and bustle outside the room. At this moment, Joey's parents enter and hug Joey tightly to heal the years of longing. Jack is afraid of the noise and pulls himself together. Then they spend another day in the hospital and with Joey's insistence, the means to return home are provided. In the meantime, Joey finds out about her parents' separation and her mother's marriage to their family friend, Lou. She also sees Nick's arrest on the news and is relieved. Jack is in awe of the new world, seeing different people with different faces and smells, and at the same time he is surprised when they talk and he feels confused about this issue. After being under observation for about 37 hours and with the approval of Dr. Middle, Jack and Joey prepare to be discharged. After being discharged, they arrive at Nancy's house and rush past the noisy reporters. Lou also welcomes them. Nancy tries to communicate with Jack, but Jack doesn't answer and at best whispers the answers in his mother's ear. Instead, Joey asks him to answer the questions himself. Then Jack sees the toys in front of him and Joey explains that they are a gift from the people who are happy to have Joey and Jack back. Moments later, Robert also returns home and informs the others about the lawyer's words about Nick's conviction in court. After that, Nancy takes Joey to her room and offers Jack a haircut. Jack also whispers in Joey's ear again and tells about the role of his hair in his strength. After that, Nancy leaves the mother and child alone. After a few hours, Jack and Joey return downstairs for dinner. After that, they eat ice cream and Jack is surprised that he is cold and his head is shot. At this moment, Robert expresses restlessness and gets up from behind the table with the excuse of being tired. Joey asks why and complains about his neglect of Jack. Then she asks her father to look at her son, but Robert refuses. Joey is saddened by her father's refusal and returns to her room. The next morning, Robert returns to his home in another city. In her room, Joey opens her diary and shows Jack pictures of her friends. Then she talks about her skill in running and running races. A few hours later, Joey's lawyer comes home and offers a high-profile interview, promising substantial earnings. The next morning, Jack goes downstairs and turns back when he sees Liv. Lou also pretends not to see. Then he mutters to himself the words of hunger and delicious food while going to the kitchen. Jack follows him and eats breakfast with Lou and asks about Seamus, Lou's dog. Then he said about Lucky, his unreal dog. Afterwards, Dr. Middle also visits Jack and Joey and is pleased with Jack's communication progress. The doctor also goes to Joey's room and talks to him privately. After the doctor leaves, Jack watches Dora in his mother's room on Nancy's cell phone, and Joey is annoyed by the noise. Then she takes Jack's hand and leads him to the toys downstairs. She forces Jack to play with toys. Nancy is surprised by Joey's behavior and invites her to calm down. Joey resentfully attributes her behavior to Jack's inability to communicate. Nancy talks about Jack's progress. However, Joey isn't satisfied. She then yells at her mother and blames her for being stolen. Because her mother has always expected the right behavior, and this has caused Joey to go to Nick for help. She then calls his lawyer and asks him to arrange the interview. Reporter and cameraman come to Nancy's house. Joey gets ready for the recording and then gets in front of the camera. The reporter begins the interview by asking about Joey's decision to inform Jack about his father, who is actually old Nick. He then continues his challenging questions, asking Joey about why she didn't ask Nick to get Jack out of the room, and in fact, her lack of selflessness in saving her child. Joey thinks deeply with this question. After the interview, Joey remains silent and thoughtful. At night, Jack wakes up and notices that Joey is gone. He looks for Joey and eventually finds her in the toilet. Then, seeing Joey on the toilet floor, he screams and calls Nancy and Lou. Lou lifts Joey off the ground and Nancy calls 911. Joey is taken to the hospital and Jack is saddened to see this picture. The next morning, Joey calls from the hospital to talk to Jack. Jack angrily asks her to come home faster. It's been a few days since Joey was hospitalized. Jack notices his mother's rush to go to heaven and that the aliens brought her back to Earth for not being with Jack, so he becomes happy. That's why he copes with this situation and gets along with Nancy and Lou more than before. He goes shopping with her grandmother and his mood improves a lot in the absence of communication. Then, with the purchased ingredients, they prepare cupcakes. Nancy is surprised by Jack's skill in this work and Jack explains, he has done this in the room that he misses. A room that continued from all sides and was infinite, and his mother was always with him. At the same time, Lou returns home with Seamus, making Jack happy. Jack also joins Seamus and plays with him. After the game, Jack decides to cut his hair and give his power to his mother. That's why he asks Nancy to help him in this work. Nancy is also happy and goes to work. Jack asks about the possibility of power being transferred from his hair to his mother, and Nancy confirms that we are all strong together and draw strength from each other. After a while, Nancy washes Jack's hair and Jack, who has enjoyed Nancy's company and expresses affection for her. After a few days, Jack with Aaron, he meets the boy next door and they play together. During the game, Joey calls Jack and after a few days away they hug each other. Joey apologizes to Jack and promises it won't happen again. She also thanks Jack for the power transfer and attributes her recovery to the companionship of Jack's hair. Jack also accepts her excuse and returns to Aaron. Jack is still in awe of the vast world he has just discovered and decides to try the world's endless things. He and his mother taste all kinds of food to find their interests. Also, at home, they create happy moments for 4 people and enjoy being together. One day, Jack asks to visit the room amid much happiness and pleasure. Joey accepts with Jack's insistence. They return to the room with the permission of the police and under the control of the officers. Overwhelmed by the vast and wonderful world outside the room, Jack notices the smallness of the room. Then, he says goodbye to all the things left in the room and asks his mother to do the same. After that, forever, they leave the room.